Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Parliamentary Procedure Training. I'm Nicole Allen, the Director of Open Government with the Office of Open Government. I am pleased to present Robert's Rules Made Simple with our expert trainer today, Susan Leahy. We are so pleased to have her. She has trained governments all across the country, including the United States government, the U.S. Congress, state and local government. So we are so pleased to have her with us. I will turn the presentation over to her. I think we have a critical mass of folks here, so we can
Yep.
get started. And this meeting is being recorded. And we'll provide you all with a copy of the recording, and it will be available in our training portal, which she's also going to introduce you to today. So Susan, take it away.
Thank you, Nicole. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar. My name is Susan Leahy, excited that you are here. I'm going to invite everyone, because I know that we're all living our own busy lives, but I'm going to invite everyone to take an intentional deep breath in with me real quickly. Ready on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Oh, and exhale, because what we want to do is we want to breathe new life into our meetings. It's that sense of how do we really create a dynamic in our meetings where people walk out owning that that was really a healthy dynamic, and that Robert's Rules of Order should be a tool that helps to foster a healthy board dynamic. And we're going to talk about that today. And as Nicole shared, my name is Susan Leahy. I am the creator of Robert's Rules Made Simple. I have a global training and consulting firm. I've trained over 10,000 boards across the United States and Canada on the fundamentals of Robert's Rules of Order. And I really specialize in working with board chairs on how to up-level their confidence and competence when running meetings. And I have collaborated with city governments, and I've also created your Robert's Rules Made Simple training portal, which you'll learn more about today. So I want to start with the preface of Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's has gone through 12 different revisions. This is the 10th revision that's on the board. I actually loved what was listed in the preface so much, I kept it in my presentation. And so I want us to just take a moment to read what this is. And if you're somewhere that you can read this out loud, it'll help you kind of stay engaged in the program. So go ahead and take a moment to read this with me. But one of the greatest needs in parliamentary procedure today is for an increased yet relatively small basic portion of it to become the common property of everyone. Now, I always love to invite everyone to say everyone, right? I want you to think about all of your board members. It's not enough that you yourself understand the fundamentals. It's that your dynamic on your board will up level if everyone on your board takes some time to understand a small basic portion of this language. And so one of the tools that we are providing to you all is access to the Robert's Rules Made Simple training portal. I would love every single person on this call to think of themselves as an advocate to support whatever board you are on, and really be somebody that shepherds the individuals on your board to take advantage of the content that is housed on this portal. This training portal is available to DC public body members and their APCs, and it will reinforce the information that we are going to be sharing in this webinar today. So you will be receiving an email from us about how to log on, so please pay attention to that. What I want to show you real quickly is that this is the opening page, and when you scroll down, you'll see a number of what we call courses. So right now, you're going to have 3 different courses that are available to you, and I would encourage you to make sure that you watch and review them all. We've got one about the Open Meetings Act with respects to a pre-recorded webinar. You don't want to miss that. We have the Robert's Rules Made Simple individual training program, and we also have all DC meeting webinars. They're all the recorded webinars. This webinar will live there as well, so you can invite other board members to visit that as well. At the end of this training, what I'm going to go through a little bit more in detail is this course, which is the Robert's Rules Made Simple individual training program. If there is one thing that you advocate for, it's that everybody on your board access the portal and agree to go through all of the content in the Roberts Rules Made Simple individual training program. This will help support up-level your board's efficiency. Because at the end of the day, Robert's Rules of Order is a tool. It is a tool to help your boards make business decisions. It is a tool to help keep order in your meetings. It is an amazing tool that fosters and supports better communication. And it is a tool, when utilized properly, that will help your board be more efficient and get more work done. Robert's Rules of Order, at the end of the day, should support in creating a healthier board dynamic. You know, for me, this is what the game is all about. Whenever I trained Robert's Rules of Order, I always want to speak about the importance of the health of your board. Every single committee member, board member, every individual in that meeting is important. Their life is important. The work that you're doing is important. And I believe it's essential that we start talking about, is this a healthy dynamic? And if the answer is no, then we have a training opportunity, right? So thinking about how to take advantage of all of the information available to you so that you can make sure your board is properly trained. Now, when you're thinking about a healthy board dynamic, the first thing I want to invite you to do is to assess the health of your board. I'm going to just ask a few questions, because have you ever served on a board where they use Robert's Rules of Order as a weapon? Have you ever served in a meeting or been in a meeting where they use Robert's Rules of Order as a way to exclude or intimidate? Have you ever seen anybody use Robert's Rules of Order as a manipulative technique? I think there's probably some people out there going, yeah, we've seen that. And so I think we need to start calling out that behavior as unhealthy, because at the end of the day, Robert's Rules of Order really is a tool that will support you in being more productive when it's used properly. Unhealthy board member behaviors can manifest in the form of acting overly competitive. We can see people speaking out of turn. We can watch board members creating distractions. We can also see individuals just staying confused and disengaged. And we can also watch when other people are getting intimidated or just really want to shut others down. So all of these behaviors are something that I think that we all deal with in the meetings that we're in, and we need to start addressing those and understanding that Robert's Rules of Order really should be used as a tool that helps to foster and reinforce the health of the meeting that you're sitting in. So I'm going to real quickly just give you a very simple way of thinking about health. I want you, wherever you are, to put your thumb up in the air right here, because this is health. When you walk out of your meeting and you go, that's a good meeting, that feels good, I'm energized, I think we got a lot of work done, that's a healthy meeting. When you walk out of your meeting and the energy is here and you feel like that was a waste of time and you feel drained and you feel like you didn't get anything done, that is an unhealthy dynamic. The reason why I'm teaching you this is because in meetings, too many of us are using this. We're pointing out how everybody else is doing it wrong, rather than taking ownership for saying, wait a minute, how can we do it more healthy, right? So we need more people to stop pointing fingers and to start really thinking about and advocating for the health of your meetings. And Roberts is a tool that certainly can help you up-level the health in your meetings. So the next time you find someone doing this, tell them to come back here. Let's just talk about, was it healthy? Was it healthy? Was it unhealthy? And what are we going to do to up-level the health of our meetings, right? So fostering a healthy board dynamic. And this for me is so essential before we jump into this book, because if we don't get individual board members' mindsets right, then they're going to use Roberts as a weapon. And I will tell you, that is not the work that I am doing on the planet. I want your boards to be a healthier dynamic where people walk out feeling good about the work that you have been appointed, elected to do. So when you think about a board, the one thing that I think is so interesting is that a board never has to really learn how to be dysfunctional. But what every board needs to prioritize and you need to really think about is how do we up.
Susan, I think we may have lost your connection, or I don't know if that's me here.
Instead of pointing at people, I want you to think about and point at the training that is being made available to your board. Right? The Department of Open Government has really worked hard to bring quality training to your boards, and we need each and every board member to advocate to make sure that we get as many people to the portal and get as many people into that training as possible so that we can really make sure we're up-leveling what we're doing in our meetings. I love this. Advocate. Become an advocate for the health of your board. So these are some statements I want you to work into your daily language around how you're working with the board. I want to advocate for the health of our board meetings. This feels healthy. This doesn't feel healthy. And then encourage your board members to access the Roberts Rules Made Simple individual training program so that you can collectively learn and understand the fundamentals. Start becoming an advocate. So we're going to start getting into some of the content here, but I think it's important for you to kind of step into my brain. When I think about great meetings, first of all, I think about a great meeting as being healthy. So what constitutes a great meeting? There's the 3 C's, and the 3 C's are content, context, and chair. So wherever you are, I want you to kind of just knock your hand on the table, okay? Because I want you to feel that that's what content is. Content is the work that you can see your board actually getting done. These are the motions that you pass, the work that you do. And you utilize Robert's Rules of Order to manage the content of your meetings. Now, I want you to step into this conversation, which is the next C, which is the context. Now, this is interesting. Now, what I'd like you to do is I want you to take your hands and I want you to kind of move them around the space around you, because this is an important part of the meeting that we never talk about, but it's one that dictates so much of the success or failure of the meeting. The context is the energy of your board. Is your energy here or is your energy there? And what's fascinating is that the context always starts within each individual board member's mindset. And so we're going to talk about that at a very high level today in order to set your meetings up for success related to the content that you're going to get done. And the last piece, I want us to all understand that really the chair has the single largest impact on the success or failure of your meetings. And we need to support our chair to be an empowered chair. When we have an empowered chair, then all of a sudden that empowered chair empowers the board, and the chair and the board members are working together. There's so many meetings where it feels like the board is against the chair. And when you're in that type of dynamic, it affects the context and it affects what you're able to get done at the content level of your board. We need to start talking about creating an empowered environment where both the chair feels empowered and the board members feel empowered. So thinking about these 3 things, I want to start with context. I want to start with board member mindset. This is about you. It's very easy for you to start pointing fingers and thinking about other board members, but indulge yourself for a moment and think specifically about your mindset. I want to introduce you for a moment to your mindset. So if you could just take a moment and just make a fist for me. So wherever you are, just take a moment and make a fist. Now hold on to this fist until I ask you to let it go. I want you to look at this fist because this fist represents on any given day your mindset. So go ahead and take a moment and just look at your fist, owning that this is the way your mindset sometimes shows up in conversations. This represents what we call the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset is obviously closed. And what we find is that when we're in a closed or fixed mindset, that our mind is positional. My mind is embedded in win, lose. My mind is embedded in right, wrong. My mind is embedded in good, bad. Us, them. This is a competitive state. Now, wherever you are, I want you to shake that fist at the camera just for a moment. Just shake it right up at the camera and see me shaking my fist at you. And I want you to think about, what does it feel like to be in a meeting where board members are engaging at the level of everyone being in the fixed mindset? You don't get very much done, and it creates a really exhausting experience. And so we need to invite board members to really look at their mindset, look at your mindset. And I'm going to invite you now to open up your hand just for a moment, because this is how I want you to think about walking into your meetings. Am I in the fixed mindset, or am I in the growth mindset? What do we have here that we didn't have before? We actually have space. We have space for your idea and maybe someone else's idea, and then we can put those ideas together and some third alternative can make itself present. So it's important that board members walk in with a mindset that really is committed to growth. Now, this is always easier said than done, right? So I want us to just take a moment to think about this, that are you really, when you're in your meetings, engaging in the energy and in the thinking of win-win? Are you allowing yourself to be curious rather than be judgmental? Are you really sitting there open? I love this one, because I don't know if you know this about me, but I was raised by a mother who was a professional clown, true story. So I feel like your meetings can actually be a little bit fun, and it's where we can be a little bit more playful with the work that we're doing. And lastly, it really is a space where we can have greater collaboration. We can be more collaborative with the people in the room. And so this is an important element for me to share, because if I don't share this, what people will do with Robert's Rules of Order is they'll grab onto it as if it is a weapon, and they'll try to throw the book at you. They'll try to throw the book during the meeting. I want you to hold this information from a space of win-win, from a space of openness, from a space of collaboration, fun, playfulness, where you're really trying to get work done. Now, human behavior fascinates me. I have a master's in behavioral science. And so the question is, how do you move from the fixed mindset to the growth mindset? And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a tool that you can utilize in a meeting, and it really just involves, and I'm going to show you. So make a fist. Here it is. You recognize, I think I'm in the fixed mindset. What I want you to do is I want you to have the courage to just pry one finger open, put it to the corner of your mouth, and I want you to make this noise. We need more meetings where people are willing to take a deep breath and go, Because what happens when you go, is that it loosens the grip inside your own mind. And all of a sudden you can create a little bit more openness. Because as a human being, it's almost impossible to go from here to here. But it's possible to go from here to here to here, to here. Right? So your mindset is so important to the context of what's going on in your board meetings. And I share this at the beginning of all of my trainings because I do not want anyone to ever use Robert's Rules of Order in the fixed mindset as a weapon. I want you to use it in the growth mindset as a tool that will help you foster a healthier board dynamic. So let's take a moment and look at the other C, which is content. And we're going to talk a lot about Robert's Rules for the remainder of our training here. Before I get into Robert's Rules of Order, I want to talk about Susan's 3 laws, right? So first of all, I want you to understand that law number 1 is that everybody on your board must commit to learn the basics. So here we go. Give me 7 fingers wherever you are. This is the roadmap, just so that you can feel it. It's that simple. My job is Robert's Rules made simple. I want to make it simple. This book is complicated enough, but we need to make sure that everybody on your board at least understands this fundamental roadmap. Okay, so law number 2 is that Robert's Rules of Order should always be used as a tool to build team. And I'm going to share with you an exercise in a moment that I'm going to ask you to steal next time you're with your board. I want you to say, I went through this training, amazing facilitator, and she asked me to do this with us. And it'll kind of open up a discussion on your board. And law number 3 is that meetings Oh, if some of you want to shout out, yep, that's true, I agree, please feel free. Meetings should not be a waste of time. I think we've set our bar very low when it comes to meetings, right? And so it's that sense of how do we stop wasting time? So let's look at this because this is where our roadmap begins. Everybody has to start by committing to learning the basics. So let's put this here in the chat functionality. If everyone in the chat functionality, I'm going to put that up right now. When I say motion, you think question. So motion, go ahead and put it in the chat functionality. What are you going to think? So when I say motion, you think question. What does motion equal? Motion equals what? Go ahead and put it in the chat functionality right now. Motion equals question, right? So when I say motion, you think question. A motion and a question are the same thing. Now, why am I saying this? It's very important because you're going to have people in your boards, in your committees who have varying levels of understanding of Robert's Rules of Order. And if people don't understand that a motion is nothing more than just a question, then you're going to create an intimidating environment where people are fearful of making a motion, right? And a motion, we should never be afraid of it, is nothing more than a business question. That's all it is, right? So when I say motion, you think question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to the 7 fundamental motions. Now, when you hear that, you're going to hear the 7 fundamental what? Questions, right? These are the 7 fundamental business questions that we can ask in order to help handle our business. So each of these orange blocks represents a motion. And we always start in the same place, the main motion. I'd like everybody in the chat functionality right now to write down main motion. So wherever you are, I know that we don't have a ton of interaction here, but please take a moment in the chat functionality to write down main motion. Okay? The main motion is the main business question, right? So the main motion is the main business question. Now, sometimes people will say to me, they'll say, you know, Susan, you can't have more than one motion on the floor at a time. Now, that's not true. You can only have one main motion, but every other motion I'm about to introduce to you is a motion, is a question, but these motions are in service of the main motion, okay, the main question. So let's look at this. This is the amendment. The amendment allows you to add something to or subtract something from the main motion. Amending the amendment allows you to further add something to or subtract something from the amendment, which will ultimately impact the main motion, right? The next one is refer to a committee. So this is a really important one because I look at within governmental structures, especially the health of your structure depends on how well you work with your committees. Your committees are designed to save your board's life, right? To save you time. And so we take the main question, we refer it to a committee, and they come back to us with a new proposal or a new recommendation or a new main motion, right? The next one is postpone to a definite or certain time. This is when you need to go back to your constituents, get more information about a motion before you vote on it. So I move to postpone this to our next meeting. This is a really powerful motion, important to be able to understand how to use. And many times people try to use a lay on the table instead of a postponement. So I would love for you to pay some attention to this because in fact, put up your 7 fingers really quickly. When I work with my boards, what I do is I say, here's your roadmap, but I only really want you to bother yourself with 6 of these motions. Lay on the table is misused. You only lay a motion on a table in lieu of more pressing business. Sometimes people will try to use a lay on the table as a manipulative technique to kill a motion. And if your chair is unskilled, then your chair may allow a lay on the table when it is not germane. And so I would say use postponement instead of a lay on the table. The last one, which I love, this one always makes me go, whoa, because this puts the power back into the hands of those who are in the meeting, the board members. Have you ever been in a meeting and the conversation is going on and on and on and on about emotion? If people are saying the same thing and it feels like we understand how we want to vote, we shouldn't let conversation drag on. We just simply raise our hand and we say, I move the previous question, which you should think, what? Previous motion. So all I'm saying is, hey, I would like to vote on the previous motion. And if 2/3 of the room agrees with me, then we stop discussion, the previous question passes, and we vote on the previous motion, right? So a very powerful tool to make sure that you're empowering your board to keep the conversation and the meeting moving forward. So that is your introduction to the 7 fundamental motions, which I've now made even simpler because I only want you to advocate that your board focus on these first 6, right? So let's look at law number 2. Robert's Rules of Order is a team building tool and that your board should strive to work as a team. This is a very simple self-assessment. I would invite you to please steal, put it up on a whiteboard or just grab a piece of whiteboard paper and just write this very simple graph down. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And I'm going to ask everybody in the meeting right now, can you please indicate in the chat functionality, what is your number? Are you a 1 with Robert's Rules of Order, meaning you're brand new? Are you a number 2? You maybe fear Robert's Rules of Order or you hate it. Are you a number 3? You get lost easy. Are you a number 4? You're comfortable. Or are you a number 5? You feel like, okay, I have a little bit more of a mastery than others. And when people get lost, they look at me and I'm the mentor. I can teach it. So what number do you think you're at? So go ahead and in the chat functionality, you can either send it to me privately or let everyone see it. It doesn't matter. Go ahead and type in your number. Are you a 1? Are you a 2? Are you a 3? Are you a 4? Or are you a 5? Now, while you're putting in your numbers, the reason that I invite you to do this on your board is because it's a very bizarre thing that happens. People overestimate what everyone else knows about Robert's Rules of Order, and so it creates a really intimidating environment. And so what I have found is that when you can sit down, especially at the beginning of your term, and say, let's just see where everybody is with Roberts and make it a more open discussion, then all of a sudden we could really start responding to the needs, the specific needs of your board. Okay, so this is what a lot of my boards look like. It is not uncommon, even when we've had people serving for many terms, for people to just kind of just barely be comfortable. And few times are there, people on a board that can actually teach it. So there's a lot of people down here who are lost, right? And so it creates a weird environment in the meeting, within the context of your meeting. The goal is to get everybody above the line. Not everybody needs to teach this stuff. We just need to make sure that everybody is comfortable with the fundamentals. How many times have you been served on a board and it's like, okay, yeah, we use Robert's Rules of Order. Good luck. Right? But what I want you to do is I want my 5s and my 4s to reach out to my 1, 2s, and 3s and say, okay, how can we help each other? How can I get you above the line? So that we make sure that everybody, your chair, your vice chair, your board members, your staff, understand the fundamentals of Robert's Rules of Order. There's too many stumbling blocks because we don't understand the basics of a main motion, of an amendment, amend the amendment, refer to a committee, postpone to a definite time, lay on the table, and previous question. If we can understand how to vote and how to make and vote on each of those motions, you will exponentially increase your board's effectiveness. So this brings us to law number 3. Okay, so we're moving through my laws and then we're going to get into some examples here in a moment, and then we'll take any questions that you might have. Meetings should not be a waste of time. So let's see what you think here. In the chat functionality, what I would like you to do is to enter in the completion of this equation. Time equals what? So you can give it to everyone or send it to me privately, whatever feels most comfortable for you. Time equals what? Go ahead in the chat functionality and put that in there right now. Let's see what you come up with. Time equals, how have you been conditioned or trained to think about or look at time? not uncommon what I'm hearing and seeing here. Absolutely. We've been trained to think about that time equals money. And while this is true, there is a deeper truth that we need to pull into our meetings, because time doesn't just equal money. Time equals something so much more important. Time equals life. And what would happen in your meetings if you brought this equation in with you? And we started asking this question at the end of our meetings. Was this meeting a good use of our life? And if people are like, yeah, it was a good use of our life, then we know we've done a good job and we're sitting in a healthy dynamic. But if it's like, no, that wasn't really a good use of our life, then instead of pointing fingers, we have a training opportunity. And remember, the goal is to become an advocate for the health of your board and utilizing the tools and the trainings that are being made available to your board in order to up-level the content and the context of your meetings. So I'm going to take you into my brain again. I've already showed you kind of the fixed mindset and the growth mindset, but I'm going to take you into my brain when I walk into a meeting and I look at the agenda. So when I look at the agenda, and I'm going to encourage you to do this as well, I want you to look at each and every item on the agenda, and I want you to ask yourself these two questions. I want you to ask, is this an information item or is this a business item? And this is very important for you to understand, because information items are handled vastly different than business items. When people say to me, oh, well, Susan, we use Robert's Rules of Order to run our meetings, I always want to correct them, and I want to say, well, you only use Robert's Rules of Order to handle the business of your meetings. You do not use Robert's Rules of Order to handle information. You're only using Robert's Rules of Order to handle the business. When you're having to vote on something, make a motion, take a vote, and record that into your minutes. That's the business of your meetings. Everything else is information. Okay, so again, I'm a very visual person. I also am a very auditory person. I want you to just see the difference here and hear the difference. That information items in your meetings should move like this. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Go. Move it, move it, move it, move it. We quickly and expeditiously need to move through information items, because information items are important, but they are of no consequence. We're not voting on them. We're not doing anything because of them. Information items should be moving through quickly and expeditiously. Business items, a little bit of a different rhythm. This is the rhythm of Roberts. It's a predictable beat. It's a predictable set of rules. You handle each and every motion pretty much the same way, right? So we want to understand the difference between information and business, okay? And I'm going to show you that rhythm right now. So for those of you who are board chairs, I think it's important for you to understand that related to information items, you are free to add time frames to some information items, but you can't add time frames to business items. You can't arbitrarily say the next item of business is this, and we're going to spend 10 minutes on it. But what you can do with an information item is say the next item on the agenda is an information item, and we have designated 5 minutes to this information item. Okay, so we handle information different than we handle business. So let's look at Robert's Rules of Order inside what I call the pyramid of precedence. What does precedence mean? Precedence mean this comes before that, right? So there's a precedence or an order in which we handle our business. So I want you to just take a moment and create a triangle with your fingers, because again, I think it's important to get the body involved. Everything on the outside of the triangle is information. Everything on the inside of the pyramid is business and requires you to utilize the process of Robert's Rules of Order. Now, how do you get into the pyramid? And let me just kind of show you that at the bottom of the pyramid is always the same motion. It's the main motion. So I want you to look at your fingers, your thumbs, and I want you to just kind of open it up. The door to the pyramid is always the same. You open it and you close it by making a main motion. I move. And once that motion is moved and seconded, boom, you are inside of the pyramid of precedence. You are handling the business item that's on the agenda. And you can then use all of these other motions or questions in service of the main motion. Now, how do we get out of the pyramid? Can anybody type their answer down into the chat functionality? If we have to make a motion to get in, what do we have to do in order to get out? Can anybody take a guess at that? Right? So in order to clear that item of business and get out of the pyramid, we have to what? Anybody want to take a guess? We have to take a vote, right? So all those in favor of the main motion, say aye. All opposed, motion passes. Boom. Now we're outside the pyramid. There's nothing inside the pyramid, and the chair is free to move on to the next item on the agenda. So the pyramid of precedence is really important for you to realize that there is a defined structure that we're utilizing in our meetings. And when you're thinking about this, it's as you make motions like stair steps up, so you must vote the same way down, especially when it comes to these first three motions. So we've got the main motion, the amendment, and amend the amendment. I'm highlighting these because these are the three most widely used, but they're the three most widely misused. I have seen boards trying to make amendments that didn't fit or make sense because they didn't really understand how to make or vote on a main motion, amendment, and amend the amendment. So here we have our pyramid of precedence. There's 7 fundamental motions. I'm asking you to focus on 6. And now what I want you to advocate for when you go back to your boards is that these are the 3 that you're going to make sure everybody understands so that you can up-level the efficiency of your meetings. So it's the main motion, amendment, and amend the amendment, making sure everybody knows how to make a main motion, make an amendment to the amendment, and then how to vote on that. And we're going to show you that in a moment. All right. So I love it. You're absolutely right. I got several answers about taking a vote. So let's look at the rhythm of Roberts, right? Boom, boom. What I love about Robert's Rules of Order, and especially when I work with my board chairs, I always invite my board chairs when they start handling the business side of their meetings to slow down. Repetition is a good thing. We need to make sure everybody knows, what are we talking about? How many of you have ever been in a meeting and people are talking and nobody really knows what the motion is? Can anybody put in the chat functionality? I have. I've been in a meeting like that, right? So yes, we've all been in meetings where we're wasting a little bit of our life because people don't really understand what are we actually talking about. Okay, so the first thing that the chair will do is the chair will announce the next item on the agenda is business item X. So the chair will differentiate if it's an information item or a business item so that he or she can make the board aware of what type of rhythm we're going to move into, right? And if it is a business item, then the chair will immediately ask for a motion. Now, everybody take a deep breath for a moment. Because this is where many boards waste a lot of life, is that we have board members who are too intimidated to make a motion. And so they will talk and they'll 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 talk. And then somebody goes, should we make a motion? And so what we've done is we've wasted a whole lot of life. And so what Robert says is that before any discussion is entertained on any business item, there first must be a motion on the floor. So the next item of business is there a motion? Now let's think about this just from a logical standpoint. Why does Robert say that a motion has to be put on the floor before discussion is entertained? Because a motion equals a question. So before we invite discussion, we have to know specifically what question are we talking about? Because if we just invite the board to talk, we're wasting life, right? So it's important. You make a motion, the chair will then ask for a second, because the second, I need you to hear this, the second doesn't mean that you agree with the motion, doesn't mean that you disagree with the motion. It just signifies that you find this motion or this question worthy to discuss. So the chair asks for a motion, a board member makes the motion, the chair asks for a second, board member makes the second, and then the chair repeats the motion. This is the rhythm of Roberts. Roberts says that the chair has to repeat the motion in order for that motion to become the property of the board. Now, what I love about this is that the motion becomes property of the board. It no longer belongs to any one person. So we can get our egos out of the boardroom, because just because I made the motion doesn't mean I'm any more special than anyone else in the room, because once that motion is made and seconded, it now belongs to the board. And the board is going to discuss that motion. And the board members can add something to or subtract something from, or they can refer it, or they can postpone it. And then ultimately the board can vote on that motion. It does not belong to any one person. It belongs to the board. So is there a motion? The motion is moved. The chair asks for a second. Then the chair repeats the motion. That means that the motion is the property of the board, and the chair will say, is there any discussion? Now, it's important for you to understand as a board member that it's at this moment when the chair says, is there any discussion regarding the main motion? Whatever motion was just made, that you can do one of two things. You can either debate for or against that motion. I agree with the main motion. I disagree with the main motion. Or this is where you can make another motion. I move to amend the main motion. So this is where the rhythm continues. And then once someone makes another motion, the chair will then ask for a second. And so the rhythm then repeats itself. And we're in our pyramid, and the motions are stacking up, right? So as we make motions up, so we have to vote the same way down. All right, everybody take an intentional deep breath in. I know I need one, right? And I hope that you can feel my energy, because I really, when a board commits to understanding the fundamentals of Robert's Rules of Order, something opens up in that board meeting, and it creates what I think is so powerful that we don't see enough. Your board meetings, your committee meetings should be a learning environment, right? And so it's a sense of we are all learning, and especially in the space that we're in, within all of these schools, if your school boards and your school district can be learning environments and be an example of embodying what that means, you know, and that a learning environment requires people to be in the growth mindset, and how learning can't happen when we're sitting in the fixed mindset, right? So we're going to start here with the main motion. So wherever you are, if you can say this out loud on the count of three, ready, 1, 2, 3. I move to approve the request for $1,500 from the XYZ Club to support the 52nd annual United Community Run, right? So the motion has been made. Now that signifies to the chair that we need to ask for what, right? The chair asks for a second. Once the chair has received a second, then the chair will repeat the motion. It's been properly moved and seconded to donate $1,500 to the XYZ Club for the 52nd annual community run. It is so important that the chair repeat the motion for two reasons. Number one, the recording secretary has to be able to understand what is the motion on the floor so that he or she can record that properly in the minutes. And number two, it's essential that the board chair make sure that the board members understand specifically what we are discussing. And all of your discussion has to be specifically about the motion, the highest ranking motion on the floor. Right now, we only have the main motion. So the chair will say, is there any discussion regarding the main motion? Once that happens, you can raise your hand. You can do one of two things. This is the rhythm. You can debate for or against the main motion, or you can make another motion. So in this example, we're going to have someone make another motion. So in this case, somebody makes an amendment. So I move to amend the motion by striking out 1,500 and inserting 1,000 This then continues the rhythm. The chair will ask for a what? A second. Now, I'm going to pause because some organizations interrupt the rhythm by trying to make what's called friendly amendments. Is that something that you've ever seen? Nikel, is that something that you've seen people do, make friendly amendments? Okay. So I just want to start by saying there is no such thing as a friendly amendment, right? That a friendly amendment needs to just be treated exactly like an amendment. For the longest time, the words friendly amendment were not inside the book Robert's Rules of Order. But what Roberts found out through the years is that it became such a convoluted, misunderstood thing that was happening that they've actually written about it. And they now say if someone tries to make a friendly amendment, you treat that friendly amendment as an amendment. Okay, so note, there really is no such thing as a friendly amendment. If somebody yells out, I'd like to make a friendly amendment, the chair can choose to recognize that person, or the chair can just treat the friendly amendment like an amendment. So people can't just yell out, I'd like to make a friendly amendment. They have to be recognized by the chair. Okay, and if the chair chooses to recognize that person, the chair will say, state your amendment, and then the chair will move into the rhythm that we're about to see. But by and large, I would encourage your board to unlearn this concept of friendly amendment, because friendly amendments actually create confusion. I think that this was created by somebody who was intimidated, and so they were like, well, I'm scared of an amendment, but I'm going to make it friendly, right? And so they're using it incorrectly. So when the motion's been made, the amendment's been made, the chair just asks for a second, and then the chair will repeat the motion. It's been properly moved and seconded to amend the motion by striking out 1,500 and inserting 1,000. So what I want you to understand now is that we are now only discussing 1,500 or 1,000. We're not discussing the 52nd annual community run. We're not discussing who we're giving it to. We're not discussing when we're going to give it to them. We're going to just specifically keep our discussion focused on the amendment at hand. This is another area where boards waste a lot of life, is that we don't teach our board members how to focus their discussion. And so when a board member gets the floor, he or she feels like they just need to talk about the motion. We're not talking about the main motion anymore. We're talking about the amendment, right? So if the chair says, is there any discussion regarding the amendment? You can do one of two things. You can debate for or against the amendment. I agree with the amendment, I disagree with the amendment, or you can make another motion. All right, so hopefully what you're doing here is you're getting the rhythm of Roberts, because that's where a lot of people get tripped up, is that they don't understand the rhythm. And so every time we're dealing with a business item, it feels disjointed and we feel a little bit lost. There is a rhythm to the process of making any business decision, right? So in this case, someone raises their hand and makes an amendment to the amendment. I move to amend the amendment by striking out 1,000 and inserting 500. So this is where the chair will then continue the rhythm. Once a motion has been made, the chair will ask, is there a second? And then the chair will repeat the entire motion. It's been properly moved and seconded to amend the amendment by striking out 1,000 and inserting 500. And then the chair will say, is there any discussion regarding the amendment to the amendment? And what are we going to do? We're going to focus our discussion solely on the amendment to the amendment. You raise your hand and you can debate for or against the amendment to the amendment. I agree with it, I disagree with it, or you can make another motion. All right, so let that rhythm kind of sink in for a moment. And I think it's important, especially when you're thinking about up-leveling the productivity of your meetings, is really supporting your board chair to understand the rhythm of how to make business decisions, right? That's when meetings kind of get knocked out of balance. So I'm going to take the remainder of our time, because I'm not going to go through all 7 fundamental motions, because remember, there were 7, then there were 6, and now what I want you to focus on are 3, right? The main motion, amendment, and amend the amendment. So we're going to just make sure we finish up looking at voting. So go ahead and put your triangle back up, and I want you to think about that triangle, because we're inside the pyramid of precedence right now, how many motions are inside the pyramid? So if you can go ahead and type that out related to the example that we've just given, how many motions are inside the pyramid? So go ahead and put that in the chat functionality. How many motions do we have to deal with right now? Okay, so we've got our main motion, we have our amendment, and we have our amend the amendment. So that's what we've got inside of our pyramid. So in order to clear this item of business and move on to the next item, how many motions do we, or excuse me, how many votes do we need to take on the way down? So we have 3 motions. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that each of these motions earns its right to have a vote, and we move down the pyramid. So we'll take 3 votes. We have to vote on the amendment to the amendment. And regardless if it passes or fails, we go back down to the amendment, and then we vote on the amendment. And regardless if that passes or fails, we're back to the main motion. Once we vote on the main motion, we've now cleared that item of business, and the chair is free to move on to the next item on the agenda. So I wanted to show you this visually because this is where a lot of people get lost, okay? So just take a moment. What happens if amending the amendment fails? Now, let me just say this for those of you who are newer to running meetings, is that if the chair says, is there any further discussion regarding amending the amendment, and nobody raises their hand, then the chair just understands it's time to vote. Seeing no further discussion, we will now vote on the amendment to the amendment, which is to strike out 1,000 and insert 500. So if the amendment to the amendment fails, I think it's important for you to understand that what happens is it just simply disappears. And the rhythm picks up at the amendment by having the chair ask, is there any discussion? So the amendment to the amendment fails. We will now reopen discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion regarding the amendment? Then you can raise your hand. You do one of 2 things. We're back in the rhythm of Roberts. You can debate for or against the amendment, or you can make another motion. But what we want to see here real quickly is what happens if the amendment to the amendment passes. All right, so wherever you are, take a deep breath, look at the screen because a lot of people get lost here. If the amendment to the amendment passes, it becomes the new amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, aye. All opposed. And then the chair will say, the amendment to the amendment has passed. We will now open discussion on the new amendment, which is, right? So now we're having a discussion between 1,500 and 500, right? So very important that we look at this. The amendment itself changes. Now, the last thing I want you to see here is what happens if the amendment itself fails. So the chair will say, is there any further discussion on the amendment? If nobody says anything, that's an indicator to the chair it's time to vote. Seeing no further discussion, we'll now vote on the amendment, which is all those in favor, aye. All opposed. If the amendment fails, then it just simply goes away. And the chair re-enters the rhythm by saying the amendment has failed. We will now reopen discussion on the original main motion, which is there any discussion? You can raise your hand. You can do one of 2 things, right? But what happens if the amendment passes? So if the amendment passes, what happens? All those in favor of the amendment say aye. All opposed. It now actually becomes the new main motion. So I want you to just see that. So now it becomes the new main motion. So the chair will say the amendment passes. We will now reopen discussion on the newly amended main motion. And then, is there any discussion? You can raise your hand, do one of 2 things, right? We're re-entering that rhythm. But if we want to clear this item of business, we simply vote on the main motion and we're done. So I want us to end on these last 2 pieces. It's important to understand the rhythm, but it's really essential that you as a board really advocate for powerful debate in business items. We waste a lot of life by having people not being focused on the motion at hand. So this is just 3 steps that I've created that I train to my board members. if you want to make your debates more concise, is restate. Number one, when you raise your hand, the chair says, is there any discussion? You raise your hand and you say, regarding the main motion or regarding the amendment. So you let everyone in the room know, you know what you're talking about, right? So regarding the amendment to the amendment. Then number two, share your point. It's my opinion. It's my thought. 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. So you're being concise and to the point. And this last one is so important because how many times have you ever been in a meeting and somebody's talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, and when they sit down, you have no idea what they want you to do? Are they for it? Are they against it? Are they, okay, I have no idea what that was about. Remember, your job as a board member is to influence as well as to be influenced, right? That's the growth mindset. And so at the end of your discussion, don't be afraid to tell people how you want them to vote. So therefore, I encourage you to vote in favor of the amendment to the amendment. Therefore, I encourage you to vote the amendment to the amendment down. So you're actually telling people how you would like them to vote, because that's really where your power and your influence lies. So get clear, remind people what you're talking about, give people concise points, and then tell them what you want them to do with this information. So we've quickly gone through the content, the context, and ultimately given some tips along the way to your board chair with understanding the rhythm of Roberts so that they can help your meeting flow in a more empowered direction. Content, what you're going to actually get done. Context, the energy of the meeting. This felt great. This felt horrible. Is it a healthy dynamic where people are in the growth mindset, or is it an unhealthy dynamic where people are in the fixed mindset? And how do you support your board chair to really be powerful at really grounding that rhythm that will help you make business decisions in your meetings? So we're going to end where we began, and that is, again, asking you to please become an advocate with respects to enrolling your board members. You will be receiving an email. In that email, you will be prompted with respects to how to access the portal. You will be given a username and a password. The username is the email that we are sending the email to, so please make sure you use that email. And you will then be able to have access to the content within the training portal. Be an advocate to encourage your board members to go and access this content so that you can run better, more productive, and healthy meetings. Kevon Bridges is going to be one of your main internal contacts. If you have comments or questions, or you're going to want to make sure that your board is signed up, you can reach out to him, or you can always contact me at Susan@robertsrulesmadesimple.com. That's Susan@robertsrulesmadesimple.com, and I would be glad to support. Now, as I shared, here are the 3 courses that we have here for you today. Please focus on the Roberts Rules Made Simple individual training program. Make sure you and everyone in your board go through what, at least there's 9 different segments in this, but start with motions, amendments, and amend the amendments. You'll notice that it is created with small videos and then a quick section quiz to make sure that we are tracking your learning retention of content. So that is an introduction to the portal. I want to just take a deep breath. We're at the top of the hour. I want to say thank you for attending Roberts Rules Made Simple, a tool for healthy board dynamics. Again, my name is Susan Leahy, and happy meetings. Nikel, I'll turn it back over to you.
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for attending. We will be sending you additional information. And as Susan said, you will have access to the portal after this meeting. And please spread the word to your colleagues who weren't able to attend this training that this information is available to them. And again, thank you so much. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day and happy holidays. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.